Hey, this is Matt and Cheryl from We're in the Rockies, and we're back today for more tips of how to see the best of the West. We just finished our trip to Capitol Reef National Park, which we enjoyed, but today we're actually going to talk about 5 things that we did not like about Capitol Reef National Park, just so you kind of know what you're getting yourself into when you go.
Okay, so the first thing is that Capitol Reef is in the middle of nowhere. It is in the middle of central and southern Utah, and it really takes a long time to get there from pretty much anywhere that you're coming from. There are no airports close by. Maybe Grand Junction, Colorado might be the closest one, and it's probably 3 hours away, something like that. Salt Lake City is about 4 hours away. That's the closest major airport. I think Las Vegas is somewhere around 6 or 7 hours away from Capitol Reef. So Capitol Reef is one of 5 Utah national parks, and it sits in between Arches National Park and Bryce National Park on really some of the most remote land in the entire United States. In fact, this was kind of the last section of the United States to be mapped out by explorers. The Henry Mountains are right next to Capitol Reef, and I think that was the last mountain range mapped out. So this is just out there. It's a long drive to get there from anywhere that you go. So most people will hit it on a road trip to see the Utah Mighty Five, is what they're called, the national parks. And so most people will tend to hit it on a big road trip. Now we live in Utah, so we just spent 3 full days in the park and absolutely had a great time exploring every square inch of it.
And it's kind of funny that when I was telling my coworkers we were going to Capitol Reef National Park, everyone was saying, well, where is that? And we're all Utahns, we should know this, but seriously, it's out there. All right, number 2 is this park is a relatively new park, but it does feel like it is behind the times in some ways. There are not a lot of restroom and water facilities at Capitol Reef National Park. This is a BYOW situation. Bring your own water because there are not a ton of water spigots. When you go to Zion or Bryce Canyon, there's water spigots at a lot of the popular trailheads, but that is not the case at Capitol Reef National Park. So I recommend definitely bringing a larger water container with you. There are a couple places you can fill up, like the picnic areas, the visitor center, and the campground. But besides that, there's no water, and it's a hot, dry desert climate. So just plan ahead with the water. And there's not a lot of restroom facilities, and if you find one, it's usually an outhouse. Flushy toilets at the picnic area and the visitor center and the campground. But besides that, a lot of the trailheads don't even have a restroom facility, and then if they do, it is an outhouse. So just be prepared for some primitive accommodations in the park.
Okay, the third thing is it's not all that developed. Now, a lot of what we're telling you here today, these could be benefits for a lot of people depending on your style of travel. If you're trying to kind of get away from the crowds, Capitol Reef's a pretty good one. It's not set up and developed to handle millions of people like, say, Zion National Park is with its shuttle system. A lot more where you're kind of having to go explore things on your own and kind of figure it out. So in this case with Capitol Reef, they have quite a few dirt roads in the park. Like there's maybe 2 main scenic drives that are paved, and then a lot of the other stuff is dirt roads. Depending on your style, I guess, and depending on whether you have an SUV or not, this could be a good or a bad thing, because some of them are very, very scenic drives. But yeah, a lot of dirt roads. The parking lots are quite small. The park was created back in the 70s, and I mean, there's just like some of the parking lots have what, like 8 to 10
Yes, I feel
spots.
like that was the average, was about 8 parking spots. The visitor center might have had 15. Yeah, it's not a lot of parking.
And even though it's much lesser visited than a lot of the other parks, it still does get quite a few, and it still is having an increase in visitorship, just like all the national parks are right now during this COVID and baby boomer retiring time. And so, like the visitor center, we noticed it was packed every day, and this was in April, a time when it's not visited that much, or not as much as during the summer anyway. And so there were a lot of cars in the parking lot and kind of along the road. A lot of the hikes, like some of the popular hikes, they fill up fairly early because the parking lots are small. So that's another thing. And then like Cheryl's parents came with us on our last trip there, and they brought their e-bikes. they've got these e-bikes. They just love to ride them around because they can go just miles and miles and miles with very little effort with the e-bikes. Here, and we did see a family riding e-bikes up the scenic drive as well, but there's not a shoulder there for the bike riders. So you just have to trust that the cars coming up behind you are going to go around you and not hit you. And of course, most drivers are very considerate and all that. But yeah, there's not like dedicated bike paths or shoulders for bike riders. It's pretty, it's out there and it's pretty remote and it's pretty primitive, I guess, for a national park, wouldn't you say?
Yes, absolutely. Although, I mean, we can argue too, part of the charm. In fact, we're going to have a whole other video about things we love about this park. But we are just kind of telling you the downsides today. Number 4, there is no in-the-park lodging or restaurants. Now, I do want to specify the restaurant thing. There is one place to get something to eat, which is my favorite visitor shop of all time in any national park, which is the Gifford House, and they sell fruit pies and cinnamon rolls. And that is a delightful place to stop by, get a piece of pie, just check the place out. So much fun. But if you actually need something substantial, you are out of luck. There is legitimately nowhere to get food in Capitol Reef National Park besides a piece of pie or a cinnamon roll.
Well, no, that, but the gateway town is Torrey, which is 10 miles away, which is pretty far away for a gateway town. Like a lot of parks, like Bryce Canyon, you know, the gateway town's right next to the park. But Torrey is 10 miles away, so you do have to drive a little ways to get some food.
Yes, and as far as in the park lodging, there's not a lodge. They have one campground is it. So if you don't like to camp, then you are definitely going to need to be staying outside of the park in Torrey, 10 miles away, which isn't that far away, but still a bit of a drive. And that is one of the benefits of staying inside the park, is that you avoid the drive and you are out of luck if you are not camping.
Now that I'm thinking about it, with all the parks that we've covered, like Theodore Roosevelt National Park has Medora, which is right next to the park, cute gateway town. Springdale, Utah is right outside of Zion. Bryce Canyon City is right outside of Bryce. Moab is right outside of Canyonlands and Arches. So it's a little unusual not to have a gateway town that's right next to the park, which again just kind of illustrates how out there Capitol Reef is. Okay, so the next thing is the visitor center is pretty small and doesn't offer a lot in terms of exhibits or a movie. Now, they actually do have a little tiny movie room with a TV. They don't have like a screen either. You know, it's just kind of a TV setup. Now, it is kind of cool because they have a window above the TV, and as you sit there in the room, you can look out and see the castle. The formation is called the castle, which is right outside of the window. But then they close the curtains and they show you a movie. And the movie isn't all that great. It's maybe a little old and dated, probably.
They probably made it when the park was established 50 years ago. Maybe.
Maybe. So it's a park that doesn't get a lot of attention, probably from the National Park Service. Probably doesn't get a ton of funding. Maybe not even a ton of donations to their nonprofit partner. So the visitor center is pretty small. It doesn't have a ton in the way of exhibits or movies.
And the gift shop was definitely lacking. I did see some pretty cute coasters that I'm thinking about purchasing because they had all 5 of the Utah State Park or national parks on them. But, you know, when you go to a new place, you want to get a new t-shirt, right? Well, I checked out their t-shirts and it was not good. So if you want a cool Capitol Reef t-shirt, you might want to look online before. And I'm really not a t-shirt snob. I like lots of things, but I was kind of, the gift shop just didn't have a very good variety of things. And I think it's all just because it's a pretty small visitor center gift shop. So I guess our tip here is, you know, you might want to buy those souvenirs somewhere else. Or, like I said before, just get pie-themed. Get pie-themed souvenirs from the Gifford House right by the campground.
So one interesting thing about the visitor center is that there's not a ranger toll booth at Capitol Reef National Park like there is at most national parks. You pay or show your pass on the way in. There isn't a toll booth. You're kind of on the honor system there. As you drive down to the scenic drive, there will be a little pull out, and it says, okay, if you haven't paid for your park pass, here's where you write your check and put your money and all that. So now you can stop in the visitor center and buy your park pass there if you'd like, but most of you, again, probably if you're hitting it, you've already been to one of the other national parks and you've already bought your park pass. Maybe that's why they don't do it, because it's so rare, I think, that people are just going to Capitol Reef as a dedicated trip. One other thing about the Visitor Center gift shop is that they do have affordable little stuffed animals. And so we always do a Junior Ranger program with our kids. And so our daughter filled out her Junior Ranger program. She got sworn in, got her badge. So I bought her a little stuffed animal. That's kind of our deal. They get a little stuffed animal when they get the Junior Ranger done. And so those are affordable. That was nice. I have one more bonus thing that's kind of a drawback to Capitol Reef. And that is the hikes are steep. The hikes are actually really wonderful hikes. They are some beautiful views and variety of things, but most of them are pretty steep at the beginning with a lot of switchbacks. And I was kind of getting a little gassed there on day 3 or 4 when we were hiking. So that's your bonus 6th drawback to Capitol
just to
Reef.
assure you, they all start off steep, but then they usually level out. So it's not like that intensity the entire hike.
And they are beautiful. I mean, we'll cover those in another video as well. I actually just loved the hiking that we did in Capitol Reef, but I was kind of tired of those switchbacks at the beginning.
Yes. So if you are interested in Capitol Reef, whether you just want to know more about the park or actually you're planning a trip, we have a whole Capitol Reef playlist. So check it out. And we also have playlists of other parks in the West.
Yeah, so our playlist will help you get excited and prepared for your trip to Capitol Reef as well as the other Utah National Parks. Thanks for watching. Until next time, go west, young traveler.